What's up, guys? Brady here, coming at you with a discography ranking for Sevendust in preparation for their upcoming album One, dropping this Friday. Sevendust is a band that I've been a fan of for a long time, and they're just a very consistent band. Even though some albums I like a lot better than others, they've never put out a dud. That's for sure. And if there's one thing that re-listening back to all of these albums has really showed me is that the band actually has a pretty unique sound. I think oftentimes they get lumped into the 90s, early 2000s new metal scene as just one of those middle of the pack bands, but they really do sound unique. I don't think there's any other band that sounds like Sevendust. They have a very distinct, very chunky riffing style. They have very unique vocals with just that rasp that frontman John Witherspoon has, as well as a very interesting incorporation of multiple of their backing vocalists, guitarist Clint Lowry and John Connolly, and of course drummer Morgan Rose's very high-pitched screams. A few disclaimers I want to get out of the way before talking about these albums. For one, I'm not going to be including the Time Travelers and Bonfires album for 2014. It's, I guess, considered a studio album, but it's an acoustic album with a few tracks that have already, they're redoings of past tracks. So it just doesn't really seem fair to rank that album among all these other full-length original studio albums. And then also, that still leaves 13 albums for this ranking. So just because I don't want this video to be half an hour long, I might not be going into as much detail as I have in other rankings. I'm just going to give my overarching thoughts on the record and my top 3 songs at the end from each one. That being said, if you enjoy hearing what I have to say about this amazing band, comment below any follow-up questions you might have, and I will answer literally all of them. So let's get right into it with the album that I have to put at the bottom, which is going to be the band's 5th album, Next. I understand this might feel like somewhat of an easy target because I do think this is one of the more skipped over albums in the band's discography. I know a lot of fans actually really enjoy this album, and it does have its highlights on here, don't get me wrong. But I have to put it at the bottom simply because, to me, it's the Sevendust album that has the most filler on it. Pieces, Failure, See and Believe, Desertion. These are all songs that just don't really register with me much after listening to them. They don't really have as much hooks as other tracks on here or emotion to them. They just come off a little bit forgettable. They're just filler tracks. And just to clarify what filler means, because I think it's often misunderstood, a filler track is just a song that isn't bad, but it has ideas that are represented elsewhere already on the album, usually in better ways. That's how I feel about all those tracks I just mentioned. But yeah, I mean, the opener Hero on here is great. It has a really infectious, shuffling pace to it. The last song later in the record has some really cool dynamics to it. That's definitely a highlight for me on here. But yeah, aside from a handful of tracks, this album doesn't really do it for me. It's fine. It's not bad. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't think they have put out a dud. I just got to put this album here because to me, it has the most filler. But that being said, top 3 tracks give to Hero, the last song, and Ugly. The number 12 spot goes to Blood and Stone, their album from 2020. I actually think this is the band's most melodic record to date through and through, which is something I respect. It's at least something that gives this album a bit of distinction from others. But the problem is, most of the melodic attempts on here kind of fall flat for me, and it's actually the heavier moments that I find myself returning to most. Like Dying to Live, the opener gets the album off with a really energetic start. I love that driving snare drum in the chorus and the backing vocals, despite them literally being whoa-whoa vocals. That's not usually a compliment I give when it comes to whoa-whoa vocals. What You Become is a song I really like on here. This one actually has a really interesting heavy melodic balance because it's one of those tracks, among a few others in Sevendust discography that I will compliment, that pulls off having more melodic music overall over heavy rhythmic parts. Desperation is one of the better tracks on here too. It's just got a really infectious kind of constant mid-tempo pace to it that I like. But for me, on this record, as far as the more melodic and experimental tracks, really the only one that I think the band truly hits hard with is Feel Like Going On, track 4. That song just has a lot of like entrancing, intertwined melodies that I think are really cool sounding. It also maybe has LJ's best vocal performance on the whole record. You feel the emotion when he's singing that chorus in particular. And I like how the song ends by bringing back some, at this point, familiar melodies in the song, but they're just a lot more stripped down. It kind of is this breathing point where everything drops out, and the emotion just hits a lot harder. But yeah, aside from those tracks, like the song Love, I think tries to switch things up, and I like how Clint gets some time to shine as a lead vocalist on here, but the song just comes off a little bit dull. Kill Me is one that has like somewhat of an interesting, like eerie mood to it, but the chorus in particular in this song sounds a bit sluggish. And actually, the last four songs all in a row, including the Day I Tried to Live cover, I also find to be really forgettable. I salute this album for because it's obviously the band trying to explore some new melodic territory, but it doesn't quite hit for me most of the time, unfortunately. That being said, though, top three tracks: Feel Like Going On, Dying to Live, and What You Become. At number 11, I got Cold Day Memory, another album that, again, isn't bad. It just, I feel like it has some lackluster moments compared to other records. The opener, Splinter, is a song that's really frustrating for me because I actually really like the intro and then that initial riff you get. It's got that great stomp to it. The problem is, though, the rest of the song just never quite reaches that energy again. Like, I'm always itching for this track to bring back that main riff, like, in more prominence, but it doesn't quite ever do it. And overall, I just think the majority of the record, with a couple exceptions, just doesn't have the same energy or dynamics or nuance as other records do, like I just said. Ride Insane has kind of a cheesy chorus. Forever, track two. Unraveling, despite the fact that I actually like the melodies on this track, it feels a bit less dynamic than I'd like it to be. You do have a track like Karma, which I think is a nice change of pace with its almost flamboyant, clean guitar melodies. Better Place is another song where the melodic ideas, again, sound really good over the heavier music, though I do think this album's slightly weaker guitar tone makes itself seen here. And the closer, Strong Arm Broken, has definitely the best grooves on the album and the most energy all the way through. That's probably my favorite song on here. Top three tracks: Strong Arm Broken, Karma, Better Place. Number 10 is the band's second album, Home. This is a record that picks up pretty logically where the first album leaves off, with, for one, definitely a bit more polished of a production. And for me, I think the main issue is this album coming after the debut, being this band's second album, it just feels noticeably less memorable to me than the debut does. This is another record that I know has a lot of big supporters in the Sevendust fan base. And sure, maybe I would like it better than I do if I was listening to it in 1999. But with context now, it is one of the more monolithic releases from the band, I would say, and one that just doesn't have as good of grooves as even the self-titled record does. Like, I listened to the riffing in some of like the biggest songs on here, like the title track and Waffle and even Denial, and to me, it's not as catchy or memorable as the previous album or the following album. But it still has some moments, like the closer Bender, I think, is really good. That song has a good mix of some conventional and unconventional grooves, and I like the track Rumblefish. Top three tracks, I'll give to those two, Bender and Rumblefish, and also Reconnect. Step down on the Silvering Snake. Rescue yourself from the... Number 9 is the band's fourth album, Seasons. Probably the band's most melodic record up until that point, but some of the tracks I think are just a little middling compared to other ones on here that I really like. I think some of those more melodic attempts overall, like Broken Down and Honesty, and especially a Skeleton song, work pretty well. Obviously, the huge song on here, Enemy, has a lot of cool dynamics and a really catchy, more melodic chorus again. The title track has a really good, catchy main riff. Burned Out is super catchy. Also, the vocal cadences in the song Suffocate, I think, are super catchy too. On the flip side, though, I think the opener on here, Disease, is a little underwhelming. And just most of these songs coming off very chorus-centered to me does make the album feel like a little bit formulaic. But a solid record overall. This is at least probably the point where there's more good, memorable tracks on here than there is filler or underwhelming tracks. Top three tracks: Skeleton Song, the title track, and Face to Face. Number 8, I got to give to the debut, Self-Titled. This is obviously the band's debut. It's the album that establishes their sound as, part of that new metal movement. Although, to me, I think it takes more from groove metal than anything, just because of how groovy a lot of these tracks get. And LaJohn never reaches a point where he's full-on rapping, I don't think, either. He's just like singing and screaming very groovy and very rhythmically. That being said, though, on the production front, I do think his vocals in particular sound a little bit undermixed and just somewhat unrefined sonically. The album also overall is very uniform in sound, which is usually a trait of debut album. But overall, this is a good album. It's very, very groovy on tracks like Terminator and Black and Face. Bitch, too, which also has some very dynamic vocal interplay. The moody moments like Prayer and Speak and My Ruin, especially with those bass grooves, are actually pretty good, too. There's some filler, especially a track like Too Close to Hate, because I think the riffs are a little underwhelming. Aside from maybe some mixed vocals, I actually do really like how this record sounds. It's raw, but it's still distinct and it has an edge to it. Top 3 tracks: Speak, Black, and My Ruin. Number 7 is Animosity. So I've included all this band's classic albums basically up until this point. I do think this is the best out of all of these first array of albums, just because I think the riffing is probably the best out of all of them, like I just mentioned. TOAB, Trust, Shine On, Dead Set, all of these tracks are driven by super catchy, earwormy riffs. Praise is literally just one massive hook the entire time. Super fucking catchy. Maybe the catchiest song they've ever put out. I also love the vocal dynamics again in that song. I in general like when this band's backing vocalists get some time to shine. All 3 of them are great singers, and along with LJ, I just think that makes Sevendust again just have such a unique sound overall. I think this album just needed to be trimmed down a little bit because it's one of the longer records. It's almost an hour. Because the filler does kind of creep in towards the end with tracks like Damaged and Beautiful and Live Again. Just, again, not really feeling like they have a whole lot of new things to say at this point in the record. What makes this album my favorite out of that first array of records, I think, is just because the highlights on here are real highlights, like I've already mentioned. Or I guess I haven't mentioned the ballads yet. Xmas Day and Angel's Son, huge highlights for me on this record. Some of the best ballads I think the band has ever pulled off. And again, I love how Clint gets some time to shine as the lead vocalist on these songs. Top 3 tracks: Praise, Angel's Son, and Xmas Day. Next up is Chapter 7, Hope and Sorrow. This is a record that, especially being from the band's 2000s output, is one of the more diverse records. Overall, I think the experimental parts on this record work pretty well, and the hooks are still there. I really enjoy the industrial-leaning opener on here, Inside. And I might be biased for certain reasons, but I really enjoy the guest features on this album. I really enjoy the melodies in the track Hope featuring Mark Tremonti, and of course, Tremonti's guitar solo in this song is fucking sick. Same thing with the track Sorrow featuring Miles Kennedy. When Miles comes in that bridge section in particular, that is easily a high point on the record. And like I said, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I love how this song sounds. I also, for the record, think Chris Daughtry sounds pretty good on the track The Past, even though I do think maybe the track is a little bit sluggish. It's not his fault, though. Aside from that, the grooves on tracks like Enough and Fear and Scapegoat make the sound pretty exciting, too. Top 3 tracks: Hope, Sorrow, and Inside. Next to me. Now reaching the top 5. My number 5 pick is Alpha. Definitely my favorite out of the band's pre-2010 output. Especially at the time, it's the most dynamic and diverse record that the band had done up to that point easily. For one, the opener, Death Star, just comes out of the gate swinging right away with its heaviness. And I like the melodies in this track too. The track Feed has a really cool melodic bridge section that switches things up. Beg to Differ has these sick fucking double bass bursts that you hear in the intro and also in the bridge. And the title track is sick. The band almost goes full-on thrash metal with that song. I really like how each song feels like it has its own personality on this record. Aggression is another cool moment on here. Just a really creative melodic type song where for one we get some lead vocal parts from John Connolly, which I love to hear. And also there's a really cool solo. Top 3 tracks: the title track, Beg to Differ, and Driven. Number 4 is the band's last record, Truth Killer, from 2023. I remember being so amazed that 13/14 albums in, the band pulled off one of their most experimental records to date. You hear it right away with the opener on here, I Might Let the Devil Win, which is almost a full-on R&B track. And I fucking love how instead of putting a heavy song right at the beginning of the record like the band normally do, they did a complete 180 with this one. The song No Revolution has my favorite Sevendust groove, period. I remember when the song came out, I was fucking addicted to that fucking riff for the entire rest of the year that year. It also has some kind of industrial elements to it. That song does. Also the title track, Truth Killer. Won't Stop the Bleeding is maybe the catchiest song on this record. A ton of hooks in that track. The closer, Fence, which is also the lead single. I remember hearing that at the time and thinking, wow, that song's like classic Sevendust. And now with context, it really does feel like it was ripped off one of those first 3 records. The mysterious track, Leave Hell Behind, I like. And even the more melodic rock type songs on here, like Everything, Superficial Drug, Holy Water. All these tracks are also really, really catchy and memorable. The one track on here that sticks out as clear filler to me is the song Messenger. Aside from that, I like every song on here. Top 3 tracks I'll give to No Revolution, Sick Mouth, and Won't Stop the Bleeding. And now we get into the top 3. These 3 records were all 3 released chronologically, so this to me is like the golden era of the band. Number 3 is going to be Kill the Flaw. What a dark, dynamic record for this band. For one, like sonically, this is something that I have to like get out right away. I love how the kick drum sounds on this album. I've never heard a kick drum that sounds exactly like this specific kick drum on this specific album. It's so like deep but so thick. You really notice it on the more double bass driven songs on here, like Thank You and Not Today. Torched, which is vicious all the way through, especially in its drums. I love the mid-pace grooves on Death Dance. That song also has just this fucking phenomenal, like, eerie mood to it. Forget is a really easy highlight for me on here. Just super dynamic song. Not Today, like I mentioned, is full of hooks and it's also really heavy, but it has a good melodic heavy balance. The melodic parts, again, sound a little bit more eerie, which I like. And Clint's screams in that chorus are some of the catchiest vocal cadences the band has ever displayed. Again, I think this album only has one filler track, and for me, it's actually the title track. I just don't really remember much of the song after listening to it, and I think maybe the guitar tone feels a little bit undermixed or a little bit thin, but overall, I love the vibe of this record. It's got some of the band's most creative and dynamic songs they've ever released. Top 3 tracks, Not Today, Death Dance, and Forget. Number 2, I got to give to Black Out the Sun. This is another really dark record for the band. But with this one, I think the emotions shine maybe just as much. I even like the opener on Your Memory, which is a full-on, like, acoustic instrumental intro track. It does a good job of setting the mood. And then when the track Faithless, the pseudo opener on here kicks in, it hits hard. That track, just the opening of it, also Mountain, some great grooves on there. Nobody Wants It kind of switches things up with some unconventional type grooves. I really like that song. The track Dark AM, again, kind of harkens back to the band's early sound, especially something that would have been on the self-titled. The track Till Death, I mean, takes your head clean off right away. It's, again, some more like thrash metal influence part. Super heavy, dark, and dynamic song. Also, the closer on here, Murder Bar, is fucking crushing. You also have really good melodic stuff on this record, though. Like Cold as War is a track that is a bit one of the more middle ground ones as far as being heavier melodic, but it's a really dark song and it has some great melodies. Dead Roses is kind of heavy too, but it has like this infectious upbeat nature to it at the same time. And you have the really moody acoustic ballad on here, Got a Feeling, which does a great job of feeling, again, really stripped down and skeletal, despite the fact that it gets more climactic throughout when things like the drums kick in. I love the mood of the song. So yeah, phenomenal record. Only track I'm not really feeling is Picture Perfect. Top 3 tracks though, Till Death, Murder Bar, and Got a Feeling. So that means, according to yours truly, the number 1 best Sevendust album is All I See Is War from 2018. Aside from, again, one track that has some underwhelming moments, this album strikes a perfect balance. Each of the tracks, even the one I'm not as big on, all have their own personality. The band dials up the technicality a little bit. The grooves on here are phenomenal. Every song is memorable for its own unique reasons, whether it's a song that's catchy or just a song that conveys a certain mood. The opener, Dirty, is another one of those songs that like is heavy, but it has somewhat of like this odd upbeat nature to it. But the song is super dynamic. God Bites His Tongue has a really moody main riff to it, but then it kicks into this steamrolling drum groove in the verses. You have the track Medicated, which is a lot more mid-tempo, but the backing vocals on this song, I fucking love hearing Clint and John harmonize like that and being so prominent in this song. Unforgiven, maybe one of the catchiest songs the band has ever put out. Again, I love the vocal dynamics with both Clint and Morgan getting some time to shine in the chorus and the bridge. Sickness has a great, moodier feel to it. The track Cheers has a really dark, like sludgy feel to it that I love. Risen has that crushing double bass intro, and the track Moments is one of the techiest songs the band has ever put out. It also incorporates some piano parts. It almost has a touch of prog, this song does. The track Descend is so dissonant and so moody with both its heavier parts and its more melodic part. You have a track like Life Deceives You, which is a great ballad, despite the fact that it has some like pretty visceral screams from Morgan. And then the closer on here, The Truth, has some great grooves and almost like this swing feel in the chorus that I think is especially addicting. You may notice the one song I skipped was not original. That's the song that doesn't do much for me. I do like the kind of spacey melodies it has, but I think the song has kind of a slow tempo, and it just doesn't really keep me engaged that much. But it still has a unique personality, which, I'm going to give it credit for. So yeah, for me, this is the band's best album. It's a phenomenal record. I loved it when it came out. I still love it just as much now. Top 3 tracks: Unforgiven, Moments, and Descend. So that's all I have for the Sevendust album ranking. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please stay tuned for my review of One after it drops. And please comment below your ranking. I would love to see them. I can't imagine any 2 rankings will be the same for this band. Hit that subscribe button for more rock and metal related content from yours truly. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.